Hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Holtzmichel channel and this new mini-series called Riding the Fence. In this series we're going to be taking a look at the guide fences and woodworking machines a little closer. Later on there'll be table saws, joiners, all kinds of different woodworking machinery that we'll be looking at. Today we're taking a look at a Weinig Hydromat 23A, I believe. This machine poses a unique problem in setup in that the guide fence in this thing isn't one piece. Now on a joiner, of course, they rarely are, except for where you only have one head. Now this of course has multiple heads. This one has, I believe, 8. And so you got, and it's a modular machine as well. So that means you have different modules, like right here you have one module, here you have a module, here you have a module, and way back here. And so the problem is you can't establish a baseline in this machine through the guide fence. So you have to try to do that somehow on the fly. Now, usually the guide fence is set up behind the first vertical spindle and is aligned to that. Now, because this machine is modular, you have 3 subsequent fences behind the second vertical spindle. And in between the first and second spindle, you also have a fence which needs to be parallel to the original fence, or the final fence, I should say. And then, of course, you have the lead-in fence. How it's aligned is really not all that critical. The only thing you got to watch out for there is that you have enough lead-in to get your lumber to, or your first head to take off a chip. And so that one is really, you know, not all that terribly critical. I mean, it is, but it isn't. And but today we're going to be mostly looking at the setup on this machine, because there are a few little construction boo-boos in here that we have to overcome to make this work. I'll be bringing you in closer here and showing you what I'm talking about. The difficulty is expanded. So the equipment needed for today is of course your basic set of wrenches for loosening and tightening your guide fences. That includes an Allen wrench in this case. And then 17 millimeter box end wrench, open end wrench, and then let's see what else we need, a feeler gauge, and then of course a long ruler. And the long ruler must have a sharp edge. So today we have a 2 meter long ruler out of cast iron with a nice crisp edge. I'll be showing you that here in a minute, because you know, contrary to common belief, sure, you could try doing this with a laser, but then of course the problem becomes that you have to project your bead way out, you know, out the end of the machine, and that gets to be pretty tricky. It works, but the quick and dirty way and easiest way is with a cast iron ruler, and so it has to be nice and precise because we're dealing in the tenths of millimeter range here. And so it becomes important that, you know, accuracy is important. So let me switch around here and show you some of the features that we're talking about here. Here's our first side spindle. This is the guide fence leading in. And then here's the first fence. And this is a segmented fence, so this is going to be quite a trick to set up. It may need some shims in between the base guide and the guides that actually make contact with the wood. Then we have our second spindle right here, and here we have our first guide fence behind the second spindle. Now this is the critical one that needs to be set up, and then you have subsequent fences. Here this is just the base fence that has had the contact guide removed, and same thing back here. Now here is this is the problem right here. I did measure this with depth gauge, and I came up with about 1 millimeter depth, although it feels deeper. And so we need to shim up our contact guide so that it can actually slide over the edge of this surface right here. Now on this one, this is a pivot point, which means this part and this part pivot on this point right here. And so the rest of the guide gets aligned with this. And then of course we have to try and watch for parallelity here to this fence right here. So here's the ruler that we'll be using today. As you can see, it's a nice steel ruler, 2 meters long, almost 7 feet. And it does have a fairly nice crisp edge, and this is critical for this operation because we have to have visible contact between the guide fence and the ruler. I did try it with a long extruded aluminum level. Unfortunately, those have rounded edges, and those are not suitable for this purpose. And here's that extruded aluminum level. As you can see, there's rounded edges here, and this makes this tool completely unsuitable. And then also, there's no way of really checking it for straightness. Now with our ruler up here behind the second spindle, we've got contact right here. And then as we go along, we see got a little bit of a gap here. And so now we need to close up these gaps. But we also need to check to see where we're making contact along this edge. And we're making barely contact right here, which we need to back this off just a little bit or bring this one out a smidge. So we're going to bring this one out just a tad, because this one here also acts as a pivot, and so we don't have too much room to play with here along this edge. And as you can see, we've got gap posts all along the line, so we need to make that up. So here we have our ruler up against the guide, and fairly well pointed in the right direction where we need to. Now we're using a 1, 2, 3 block here to put pressure on the ruler against the fence, but only very slightly. You don't want to put so much pressure that you can't, that the ruler bends. This is just a little bit here off of this parallel guide here to hold this thing in place so it doesn't get away from you. So now we're getting ready to go and get the gap posts out of here. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of room in this machine, otherwise I'd show you how this works. But you got your set screw back here that you push this out with, and then the resting screw right here that holds it down, the hold down screw. So then we just need to work this out a little bit to where, let me try and get this, see if we can't there we go. Yep. So now's the step where your feeler gauge comes in. Now you need to take the absolute thinnest blade that you have at your disposal. In this case, this is a 2/1000 blade. The camera isn't really picking it up all that well. There it is. Or 0.05 millimeters. There we go. So now we're going to check to see if we can't get our blade in anywhere. This is where you also find out how flat your guides are. And we're not coming in anywhere in any depth. So this guide is ready to be tightened down. Now one thing you got to do too after you tighten down all your bolts is recheck, because otherwise The shim now that's underneath this guide is going to squash a little bit, and so it will need to be checked again just to make sure that you're still on measure where you need to be. Okay, one small correction got to make here to this monologue, and that is that this first fence behind the first head, the side head, is the dictating guide for the rest of it. So anything else behind it subsequently has to be in line with that. That means when this is run out all the way to essentially in as far as it will go, then this one has to be at 0 with it. So, and then of course the alignment from this one to this one has to be all the same, and then all the way through. We've got all this all done now, and now we're ready to lower the top heads and the feed works, and we'll start making some chips. Always make sure that all your tools are gathered up at the end of the procedure, and then also that no obstructions are in the way as the heads move up and down. So now let's see if we're roughly where we want to be. We're a little too far, so we'll go up a little more. Drop our feed rolls down some more. Now we're ready to throw some boards in here and make some chips. First boards here. Got a digital meter here. Zeroed out. Now we're going to see for parallelity, or for parallel. Okay, we've got 145.72 millimeters. 145.97. 88. 73. 145.58. Something wrong here. 145.58. Okay. $146. $146. $145.9. $145.95. $146. 145.9. $146. And 146. $145.9. 146. 145, 146. 146. And 146. So that looks like a pretty good test. Now here you can see the seam between the individual modules of the machine. And this is probably a fastener. It's one of those bolts that you don't dare ever touch. And then here's the other seam between the other module. So we have one module, two modules. Then we have another right here. So there's 3, 4 modules. And this is the joiner part. And so this part is essentially all one module, but we have 4 modules in total to this machine. That's why the fence, the guide, is divided up in so many. And then of course this spindle, this side spindle, have to have a guide in there that you can adjust back, so that way you can take off another chip or take off some material on this side, not just a groove or something. Well, YouTube, that's a wrap for today's episode of Riding the Fence. Sorry about that, getting all tongue-tied with this piece of candy I got going here. I do apologize for some of the wobbly footage. Unfortunately, I had to go handheld with a lot of it because there just wasn't any way to get the camera and the tripod in close enough to be able to really do any good. And then also some of the lousy sound quality. Again, my voice, I'm still getting over a large-scale allergic attack here from the other day, so my voice will be a few weeks in the making coming back. But anyway, I hope you guys got a little something out of this. And just keep in mind that not all these machines are the same. So I'd like to thank all the new subscribers and all the faithful subscribers that keep coming back to the channel and checking out what we got going here. If you have any critiques or comments or thoughts, please, by all means, leave them in the comment section below. I'm always open for suggestions and critiques as to far as, you know, how to improve the channel and the material presented. I realize it's not perfect, and maybe with a little bit of help from the viewing audience that a guy can get some, you know, some good reminders or some inspiration there to get things a little more viewer friendly. So with that, we'll hope to see you again soon.